One live broadcast, one fatal mistake. That's all it took to turn routine reporting into the 6 most horrifying incidents ever captured on television. These aren't just tragic accidents. They're stark reminders that in live TV, the pursuit of the perfect story can demand the ultimate price. It was July 23, 2016, when 29-year-old meteorologist Paige Donovan made a decision that would cost her everything. Known throughout the weather station as fearless and ambitious, Paige had built her reputation over 6 years by going where other forecasters wouldn't dare. Her colleagues often joked that she chased storms like others chased dreams, but on this sweltering Arizona evening, that fearlessness would prove fatal. For 3 days, Paige had been tracking what she believed would be the summer's most significant thunderstorm system, approaching Phoenix. The massive cell promised to deliver the kind of dramatic footage that separated good meteorologists from great ones. While her competitors played it safe with indoor coverage, Paige saw opportunity in the approaching danger. The weather station's observation deck had been her target location all afternoon. Despite her producer's initial refusal, Paige's persuasive arguments about capturing competitor-beating footage eventually won approval. The covered deck, surrounded by metal railings and equipment housing, offered the perfect vantage point to showcase the storm's raw power. Perched on the 10th floor of the downtown broadcast tower, it gave Paige an unobstructed view of the city skyline and a dangerously exposed position once the storm drew closer. What nobody realized was that the building's grounding system, installed decades earlier, no longer met modern safety standards. As evening approached, Paige positioned herself on the deck with her camera operator. The storm system, initially 8 miles away, began moving faster than meteorological models had predicted. Lightning flickered in the distance like nature's own strobe lights, each flash bringing the danger closer to the downtown station. Then everything changed in an instant. A lightning bolt struck the building's antenna array with devastating force. The inadequate grounding system failed catastrophically. Instead of safely directing the electricity into the ground, the current found alternative pathways through the metal infrastructure surrounding Paige's position. Although the building's surge protection system had been installed years earlier, its corroded grounding cables couldn't safely channel the lightning's residual current, allowing electricity to arc unpredictably through the structure. The electrical surge traveled through the metal railings and equipment housing, creating a deadly electrical field across the observation deck. Paige, standing near the metal railing while gesturing toward the approaching storm, became an unwitting conductor in nature's most violent electrical display. The moment her hands contacted the electrified railing, a residual current estimated at around 7,000 volts coursed through her body, energy redirected through the metal structure rather than from the lightning's full charge. The electricity entered through her hands and exited through her feet, following the path of least resistance through her vital organs. Her heart couldn't withstand the surge and stopped beating immediately. The electrical shock caused instant cardiac arrest and respiratory paralysis, effects typical in lightning electrocution. Paige collapsed unconsciously within seconds, severe electrical burns marking the entry and exit points where the current had traveled. The same electrical surge that killed her also damaged the camera equipment, cutting the live broadcast feed and leaving viewers staring at static screens. The surge also overwhelmed the studio's surge protectors, frying the transmission relays that linked the broadcast tower to the studio feed. Emergency responders reached the weather station within minutes. They found Paige in full cardiac arrest, her body bearing the telltale signs of electrical trauma. Despite immediate CPR and advanced life support measures, her heart had sustained irreversible electrical damage. At the Regional Trauma Center, medical teams fought desperately to restart her heart, but the electrical injury had been too severe. The same lightning that Paige had spent her career studying had ultimately claimed her life through a tragic combination of aging infrastructure and split-second timing. It was March 15, 2017, when 34-year-old field reporter Tristan Cole arrived at what would become his final assignment. With 11 years of experience covering local news and construction stories, Tristan had built a reputation as a thorough journalist who wasn't afraid to get close to the action. His colleagues respected his dedication to capturing the human side of every story, but on this windy morning, that commitment would prove fatal. The assignment seemed routine enough, covering the topping-out ceremony of a new residential building downtown. The 12-story apartment complex represented a significant addition to the neighborhood, and Tristan had specifically requested the story because of his experience in construction reporting. Before setting up, Tristan signed in at the site office, collected a visitor's badge, and was given a brief safety orientation, a routine step on any active construction site. He was required to wear a hard hat and reflective vest, though his camera operator noted Tristan tended to inch closer than most reporters would for a better shot. The construction site buzzed with activity as crews prepared for the ceremonial placement of the final beam. Tristan positioned himself strategically to get the best angles, despite safety personnel warning him about staying within designated areas. The veteran reporter had covered dozens of local construction projects and felt confident in his ability to judge safe distances from heavy machinery. What concerned the construction supervisors that morning were the unusual wind conditions. Gusts were reaching 35 miles per hour, pushing the limits of safe crane operation. However, with media present and schedules to maintain, the decision was made to proceed with the ceremony as planned. The tower crane, a 15-year-old workhorse that had passed its recent inspection, stood ready to hoist the final 2-ton steel beam, the ceremonial topping out piece into position. Under normal circumstances, crane operations are suspended when sustained winds exceed 30 miles per hour or gusts reach 40 miles per hour. The site's safety officer had mentioned it was near that threshold, but the presence of local officials and media created subtle pressure to move forward anyway. Unknown to anyone on site, maintenance logs had documented hydraulic fluid leaks in the boom assembly over the past month. Temporary repairs had been made, but full hydraulic replacements were deferred until project completion. The subcontracted maintenance team had documented the issue, but flagged it as non-critical, meaning repairs could wait as long as hydraulic pressure remained stable. With tight deadlines and penalty clauses looming, management chose to monitor the leak rather than halt operations. The combination of aging equipment, compromised hydraulics, and extreme weather conditions was creating a perfect storm of mechanical failure. Tristan began his live broadcast, interviewing the project foreman about construction milestones. The camera crew set up roughly 60 feet from the crane's base, outside the marked exclusion zone. But during live coverage, Tristan instinctively stepped forward to frame the crane better behind him, crossing into the restricted area by only a few meters. His enthusiasm was evident as he described the local development rising behind him, unaware that he was standing within the crane's potential fall radius. The ceremony commenced with the crane operator beginning the delicate process of lifting the steel beam. As the load rose toward the building's summit, a sudden wind gust of 42 miles per hour struck the extended boom. The additional lateral force, combined with the heavy load, created stresses that the compromised hydraulic system simply couldn't handle. The sudden gust introduced a side load the crane's jib wasn't designed to resist. The slewing ring, which allows the boom to rotate, seized under the strain. A moment later, the entire upper section sheared off its turntable connection, sending the boom and cab hurtling downward. Tristan heard the loud metallic grinding and looked up to see the steel structure plummeting directly toward his position. Despite his quick reflexes and attempt to run, the laws of physics were unforgiving. The boom struck him within 1.5 seconds, crushing him instantly against the concrete ground. The grinding sound lasted less than a heartbeat, just enough for Tristan to glance upward. Witnesses later recalled him starting to move before the steel blurred into his frame. At that height, the falling section hit the ground in under 2 seconds. The impact was so severe that death was instantaneous. The crushing trauma to his head, chest, and spine left no possibility of survival. Construction workers who witnessed the accident stood in shocked silence, unable to comprehend how quickly the routine ceremony had turned into tragedy. The live feed froze mid-sentence, leaving viewers staring at an empty frame before the broadcast abruptly cut to black. It was September 8, 2015, when 31-year-old traffic reporter Mara Jennings climbed into what would be her final helicopter ride. With 8 years of aerial broadcasting experience, Mara had become the calm voice that Los Angeles commuters relied on during their daily battles with gridlock. Known for her unflappable demeanor during chaotic traffic situations, she had earned respect throughout the industry for her professionalism and dedication to keeping drivers safe. That Tuesday morning promised to be particularly challenging for LA's notorious traffic patterns. A freeway construction project along one of the city's main interstate routes was causing unprecedented delays, backing up traffic for miles. Mara had specifically requested the early morning shift to provide comprehensive coverage of what transportation officials were calling the worst construction-related congestion in the city's history. The news helicopter lifted off from its downtown helipad, as dawn broke over the sprawling metropolis. Mara settled into her familiar position, headset adjusted and notes organized, ready to guide millions of commuters through another day of urban navigation. What she didn't know was that her aircraft had been experiencing intermittent radio communication issues for 3 days, forcing her pilot to rely more heavily on visual navigation. As the helicopter climbed to its standard reporting altitude of 1,000 feet above the congested freeway corridor, air traffic control was noting an unusually busy morning in the skies. 5 news helicopters and 2 police aircraft were operating in the same general airspace, all drawn to cover the massive traffic disruption. The convergence of so many aircraft was creating a complex aerial dance that required precise coordination. The danger began building when a competing station's helicopter approached from the east, also seeking the best vantage point to cover the same massive traffic incident. Both aircraft were operating at similar altitudes, drawn to the most dramatic visual representation of the morning's transportation crisis. The pilots were experienced professionals, but the combination of heavy air traffic and compromised radio communications was creating a potentially deadly situation. As Mara continued her live broadcast, describing alternate routes and estimated delay times, her pilot initiated a banking turn to maintain safe separation from the approaching aircraft. Standard aviation protocols required clear radio coordination, yet Mara's helicopter's faulty transceiver caused heavy static, blocking an advisory warning about nearby aircraft convergence. The collision happened with terrifying suddenness. The tail rotor of the competing helicopter struck the main rotor assembly of Mara's aircraft, sending shards of rotor blades and fragments scattering through the air. Both helicopters immediately lost their ability to maintain controlled flight, entering rapid descents that would end in tragedy. Mara's helicopter, having lost its main rotor completely, fell approximately 1,100 feet in seconds. The aircraft struck the concrete freeway median at high speed, causing immediate structural collapse that killed both occupants instantly from massive impact trauma. The crash resulted in an immediate fuel fire that engulfed both aircraft wreckage. The same traffic jam that Mara had been reporting on became the backdrop for her final moments, as emergency responders struggled to reach the crash site through the very congestion she had dedicated her career to helping others navigate. It was October 14, 2017, when 28-year-old sports reporter Damon Ellis arrived at what would become his final assignment. With 5 years of experience covering college athletics, Damon had built a reputation as an energetic journalist who brought genuine enthusiasm to every game he covered. His colleagues knew him as someone who always went the extra mile to capture the perfect shot. But on this homecoming Saturday in Texas, that dedication would prove fatal. The assignment was covering the homecoming game between 2 fierce rival universities. The atmosphere was electric, with alumni returning to campus and students preparing for what promised to be one of the most exciting games of the season. Damon had specifically requested this assignment because of his expertise in college sports and his ability to capture the raw emotion that made these rivalries compelling. Arriving 3 hours before kickoff, Damon was determined to create comprehensive coverage that would showcase the entire homecoming experience. He had convinced his producer to let him broadcast from a temporary platform erected in the stadium's upper deck, arguing that the elevated position would provide spectacular crowd shots and give viewers a unique perspective. The stadium was a 40-year-old concrete structure that had hosted countless games over the decades. While maintenance crews had noted some structural concerns with the upper deck during routine inspections, the facility had been cleared for normal use. The temporary broadcast platform had been installed by a subcontractor using mounting points that appeared secure, but had not been properly load tested for the additional weight of broadcast equipment. The subcontractor had reused decades-old anchor bolts embedded in weathered concrete, unaware that years of corrosion had weakened their grip. The crowd's synchronized chants amplified the structural vibrations, matching the platform's natural frequency, a phenomenon engineers call resonance, which rapidly accelerated the loosening. As game time approached, the stadium began filling with an enthusiastic crowd that would eventually reach near capacity, with tens of thousands of spectators packing the stands. The energy was palpable as fans streamed into their seats wearing team colors. Damon positioned himself on the platform with his camera operator, excited about the dramatic footage they would capture. Damon began his live pre-game show, interviewing alumni and describing the incredible atmosphere building around him. His enthusiasm was infectious, infectious as he painted a picture of college football at its finest, with passionate fans creating an environment that epitomized amateur athletics. The mounting bolts had been installed to standard specifications, but the sustained crowd vibrations were producing stresses the setup was never meant to withstand. The rhythmic movement was gradually loosening the connections, creating a dangerous situation that nobody could detect. Damon noticed the platform beginning to sway slightly, but assumed it was normal movement from crowd activity. He had worked from temporary structures before and trusted that proper safety protocols had been followed. His focus remained on delivering compelling coverage, unaware that the platform's structural integrity was rapidly deteriorating. The failure happened without warning. The mounting bolts suddenly gave way completely, causing the entire platform to separate from its attachment points. Damon and 800 pounds of broadcast equipment began falling 85 feet toward the concrete concourse below. The fall lasted only 2.3 seconds. He struck the concrete surface with tremendous force, suffering immediate fatal head trauma and instant death. It was December 12, 2017, when 26-year-old field reporter Caroline Mercer made the choice that would define her final broadcast. With 4 years of experience covering natural disasters throughout Southern California, Caroline had built a reputation as a dedicated journalist who never backed down from dangerous assignments. Her colleagues admired her unwavering commitment to telling important stories. But on this windy December afternoon in Southern California's foothills, that fearless dedication would prove fatal. The assignment was covering mandatory evacuations in a mountain community threatened by a rapidly spreading wildfire that had already consumed 12,000 acres of drought-stricken terrain. The fire was being driven by powerful Santa Ana winds that were pushing the flames toward residential areas with unprecedented speed and intensity. Had positioned herself at a residential evacuation checkpoint to interview fleeing residents and document the emergency response efforts. The checkpoint was strategically located on a mountain road that served as the primary escape route for hundreds of families whose homes lay directly in the fire's projected path. Her news van was equipped with emergency communication equipment, but the mountainous terrain had been causing intermittent radio contact. Fire officials had been warning all media personnel that shifting wind patterns could change the fire's direction rapidly and without warning. The Santa Ana winds were notorious for their unpredictability, capable of turning a controlled situation into a life-threatening emergency within minutes. Despite these warnings, Caroline insisted on remaining in the area to provide comprehensive coverage. As the afternoon progressed, Caroline conducted interviews with evacuating families, capturing their fear and determination as they fled their homes. Her reporting was compelling and human, showing viewers the real impact of natural disasters. The evacuation checkpoint buzzed with activity as emergency vehicles guided residents to safety. The wind patterns that had been stable throughout the morning began shifting dramatically. What had been a predictable fire suddenly became an unpredictable monster, driven by 45-mile-per-hour Santa Ana winds. The fire's advancement speed increased from 1 mile per hour to a terrifying 3 miles per hour, with flames reaching heights of 40 feet and temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Fire officials immediately announced that all personnel needed to evacuate the checkpoint area, as the wind shift had put the location directly in the fire's new path. Caroline received the evacuation order, but chose to continue broadcasting as she moved toward her news van, hoping to capture footage of the approaching fire front. The superheated air ahead of the flames created an environment that was lethal even before the fire itself arrived. Temperatures soared above survivable levels, while toxic smoke filled the air, making breathing impossible. Caroline suffered severe smoke inhalation as the oxygen was consumed by the approaching inferno, followed by third-degree burns over 85% of her body as the fire engulfed her position. The intense fire conditions prevented emergency responders from reaching her location for 47 minutes. When firefighters finally found her, Caroline had succumbed to smoke inhalation and thermal injuries. It was January 19, 2018, when 33-year-old field reporter Jared Fulton arrived at what would become his final assignment. With 9 years of experience covering severe weather events across the Midwest, Jared had built a reputation as one of the most thorough and safety-conscious reporters in the region. His colleagues respected his meticulous preparation and professional approach to dangerous weather coverage. But on this frigid Oklahoma evening, even his careful nature couldn't protect him from a tragic miscommunication. The assignment was covering a historic ice storm that had left widespread power outages and created hazardous conditions throughout the Oklahoma City metropolitan area. Ice accumulation had reached unprecedented levels, with some areas reporting over 3 inches of ice coating on trees, power lines, and roadways. The freezing rain had also disabled several cellular towers, forcing emergency crews to rely on spotty radio communication and handwritten reports. The storm had battered the region for 2 days, turning it into a landscape as beautiful as it was deadly. Jared had positioned himself in a residential neighborhood to document the ice accumulation and interview residents who were coping with extended power outages in sub-freezing temperatures. The location seemed ideal. It offered dramatic visuals of ice-laden trees and allowed him to showcase the storm's impact on ordinary families. What he didn't know was that utility records for the area were incomplete due to storm-related communication failures between repair crews. Utility crews had been working around the clock to restore power, battling ice accumulation, and the continuous threat of falling tree branches weighted down with ice. Power lines that crews believed had been de-energized were sometimes still carrying dangerous electrical current due to incomplete documentation during the chaotic restoration efforts. As evening approached, Jared began setting up for his live broadcast near what appeared to be a safe location away from major power lines. The scene around him was both beautiful and ominous. Trees bent under the weight of ice, creating a crystalline landscape that sparkled under the streetlights. The temperature had dropped to 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Jared began his live evening broadcast, standing near the ice-covered trees to demonstrate the storm's dramatic impact on the residential area. His report was informative and compelling, showing viewers the real challenges that residents face during extended power outages in dangerous winter conditions. He described the beauty and danger of the ice accumulation while maintaining his professional demeanor. The catastrophic failure happened without warning. The oak tree branch, no longer able to support the massive weight of accumulated ice, cracked completely and began falling toward the ground. The branch struck a power line that utility crews had incorrectly believed was disconnected from the electrical grid. The line was still energized by a nearby substation after automatic grid rerouting minutes earlier. The impact caused the power line to snap and fall directly onto Jared, who was standing 8 feet away and had no time to react. The 13,200-volt electrical current caused immediate cardiac arrest as it entered his body through his shoulder and exited through his leg. Witnesses saw a brilliant blue-white arc flash as the wire contacted his shoulder, momentarily illuminating the ice-covered scene. The electrical shock killed him instantly. Emergency responders arrived within 12 minutes, but found that death had been instantaneous. The live broadcast captured the entire incident before the camera operator shut down the equipment. Jared was pronounced dead at the scene from electrical cardiac arrest. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.